Chapter 374. The Second Bloodline, Grandian Wen Dao Bloodline. The ancient origin sect was bustling with activity. In roughly a month's time, the martial king coronation ceremony for Lin Fei would be held. Lin Fei himself wasn't particularly concerned about this event, but the sect master of the ancient origin sect and other martial sovereigns insisted on hosting it. It was a ritual. On the ancient continent, whether one achieved the prowess of nascent soul or martial king, a grand celebration would be held. This ceremony is a message to the outside world, signifying the rise of the ancient origin sect to the ranks of the martial king lineage, especially now that they had a martial kin to safeguard them. The identity and status of the ancient origin sect would now be on par with other martial king families and nascent soul lineages. Therefore, this celebration was of paramount importance to the ancient origin sect. Seeing its significance, Lin Fei didn't protest further. He entrusted the event's planning to the sect master. During this period, Lin Fei was preoccupied with the matter of his second bloodline. In hindsight, Lin Fei felt somewhat fortunate. He hadn't insisted on cultivating the 9 top-tier great divine abilities but chose to integrate the bloodline of the Azure Flood Dragon King, leading to his ascension as a martial king. This bloodline, equivalent to the 5 top-tier great divine abilities, was indeed formidable. Had he not ascended to martial king and faced the Taoist Lord Qianhe invited by the Tai Dao Palace, the consequences would have been unthinkable. After all, regardless of how powerful Lin Fei was, a martial sovereign would not match a nascent soul cultivator. However, in his battle against Qianhe, even though he had destroyed the magic avatar, the latter still managed to escape, despite Lin Fei possessing the saber world advantage. It was evident that the Taoist Lord was no pushover. Lin Fei, fresh into his martial king status, not only defeated him head-on but also came close to killing the esteemed nascent soul cultivator. Killing such a being, even for another of equal power, was an arduous task. Yet, possessing the saber world gave Lin Fei an unparalleled edge. He had the potential to slay a nascent soul cultivator. However, relying solely on his supreme saber Dao bloodline was insufficient. He needed a second or even a third bloodline. As for the cultivation of this second bloodline, Lin Fei had been contemplating the direction. Within the Dubhe Dao artifact, he had ample techniques to cultivate various bloodlines. Yet, choosing which one to cultivate required careful consideration. Cultivating a bloodline would require its own advantages, otherwise, progression would be tough. For instance, Lin Fei's expertise in Saber Dao was exceptional, allowing him to master the Saber Dao bloodline rapidly. Cultivating other unfamiliar bloodlines might be more challenging. Of course, the difficulty in cultivation wasn't Lin Fei's primary concern. He was pondering how to compensate for his own shortcomings or even how to slay other powerful banes. For instance, when it came to the Taoist Lord Qianhe, there were 2 ways to defeat him. The first was a swift, lethal strike, which was challenging given Lin Fei's current power. The second method would be to match the escape technique of the Taoist Lord Qianhe. Evasion techniques. Lin Fei muttered, lost in thought. Speaking of evasion, it was indeed his weak point, and arguably that of all martial kings. Martial kings lacked evasion techniques, unlike nascent soul cultivators, who all had their own unique methods. Even Golden Core true persons had evasion skills. Martial kings were unparalleled in direct combat but often found it challenging to kill their opponents because of the evasion skills of the nascent soul cultivators. They could flee the scene if the battle wasn't in their favor. While Lin Fei could teleport within the saber world, its coverage was limited. Outside of its range, he was powerless. However, he had an epiphany. Martial kings might not have evasion techniques, but they can have speed. When speed reaches a certain level, how is it different from an evasion technique? He thought. Regarding speed, light was the first thing that came to Lin Fei's mind. What could possibly be faster than light? However, even if he knew the speed of light, he had no means to cultivate a bloodline associated with it. Apart from light, the next fastest thing that came to mind was wind, which was historically associated with speed. Especially if one cultivated the wind bloodline, their affinity with wind would be unimaginable. Lin Fei believed that once he cultivated the wind bloodline, his speed might not be inferior to that of wind evasion. Moreover, the wind bloodline wasn't just about speed. It also had offensive capabilities on a large scale. One of Lin Fei's divine abilities, Black Wind Prison, was wind-based. And it was the kind of wind that could erode binds. Wind could be deadly and terrifying. The second bloodline I'll choose is the wind-type bloodline. Lin Fei made up his mind. Since his bloodline had integrated the Black Wind Prison, the wind bloodline, which he was already familiar with, would be easier to cultivate, yielding faster results. It might even reach mastery instantly, just like the Saber bloodline. However, a suitable bloodline cultivation method had to be chosen. Inside the Dubhead Dao artifact, after some selection, Lin Fei realized that wind could be of different kinds, such as Grandian or Grandian. In the end, Lin Fei chose the Grandian Wind Dao bloodline. He opted for Grandian because of Black Wind Prison, which was a yin attribute wind, like the bone-eroding wind that was cold to the extreme. Cultivating a familiar bloodline would undoubtedly yield better results faster. Then, let's begin. Lin Fei addressed the technique of the Grandian Wind Dao bloodline, saying, "Would you be willing to help me achieve the Grandian Wind Dao bloodline?" Buzz. Suddenly, a hint of the Black Wind Prison divine abilities aura emanated from Lin Fei's body. Moreover, Lin Fei's Supreme Saber Dao bloodline also emitted a similar aura, as if it was a divine saber poised above this technique, almost like a threat. If it didn't agree, perhaps the saber might strike down. Whoosh! Immediately, a ray of light entered Lin Fei's body. Grandian Wind Dao bloodline requests to become your martial art. Agreed. The next moment, Lin Fei's entire body trembled. Then, a foreign memory emerged in Lin Fei's mind. It was the memory of cultivating the Grandian Wind Dao bloodline, and it was just at the beginner level. However, as the Grandian Wind Dao bloodline was born inside Lin Fei, his inherent Black Wind Prison divine ability gradually merged into the Grandian Wind Dao bloodline. Boom. In the next instant, a massive phantom appeared behind Lin Fei. It was that familiar giant's image. But now, this phantom was surrounded by a greyish wind, cold and eerie. With a thought, Lin Fei knew that his Grandian Wind Dao bloodline had reached beginner. This was the second martial king bloodline he had cultivated. System. Lin Fei immediately accessed the system to check. Host, Lin Fei. Martial Realm, Early Martial King. Supreme Saber Dao bloodline, Perfection. Grandian Wind Dao bloodline, Beginner, Progress 70%. Saber World, Perfection. Even though Lin Fei's Grandian Wind Dao bloodline incorporated the divine ability of Black Wind Prison, its foundation in wind techniques was nowhere near as profound as that of the saber technique. As a result, the Grandian Wind Dao bloodline could only reach beginner level and did not achieve mastery directly. However, this wasn't an issue. Lin Fei could find ways to perfect the Grandian Wind Dao bloodline. Right, I now have two bloodlines. If I have descendants in the future, which bloodline will my offspring inherit? In Lin Fei's mind, a rather quirky and peculiar idea suddenly emerged. Chapter 375. Martial King Celebration. Lin Fei shook his head, discarding the peculiar thought in his mind. Now that he had acquired his second bloodline, he thought, let's give it a try. Standing up, Lin Fei took a step forward, directly entering the void. Grandian Wind Dao bloodline. In the next moment, Lin Fei let out a low roar, instantly activating the Grandian Wind Dao bloodline within him. Boom. Lin Fei's body began to expand rapidly. In the blink of an eye, he transformed into a colossal giant that spanned thousands of miles, towering in the void. However, this time, Lin Fei's true martial king form differed from the previous Supreme Saber Dao bloodline. Gone was the sharp aura of a saber blade, replaced by a more vast and elusive presence. Patterns on his body seemed twisted and shimmering. Is this the martial king's true form after activating the Grandian Wind Dao bloodline? Lin Fei stretched out his hand. The sensation was peculiar. With a simple grasp, it felt as though he could capture the wind in his hand. Whoosh! Opening his mouth, Lin Fei blew out, instantly causing a fierce wind that turned into a massive tornado, obscuring the skies and rampaging in the void. It was as if Lin Fei had transformed into the ruler of the wind. Every move carried the power of the wind. Moreover, it wasn't just any wind, but the Grandian wind, more terrifying than bone-corroding wind. It's an upgraded version of the bone-corroding wind. The places passed by the Grandian wind became extremely cold, freezing everything in its path. A bloodline is so powerful it could change the colors of heaven and earth. Yet, that was just a side effect, or rather, a feature of the Grandian. What Lin Fei sought was speed, a speed that could rival teleportation techniques. Whoosh! In the next moment, the massive figure of Lin Fei vanished. He then appeared at the other end of the void. Is this a wind teleportation? Lin Fei was slightly taken aback. It wasn't about the speed. He only felt that after activating the Grandian Wind Dao bloodline, he seemed to have an affinity with the wind. As if whenever he willed it, he could completely merge into the wind. Thus, following this sensation, Lin Fei merged into the wind and found himself instantly at the other end. It seemed no different from wind teleportation. Of course, there might be differences, but what did that matter? As long as the effect was the same, anywhere there was wind, Lin Fei could activate his Grandian Wind Dao bloodline, allowing him to merge with the wind and reappear at the other end. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Lin Fei tried it many times over. Where he could fly quickly depended on how far his sensing of the wind extended. As long as he could sense the wind, he could instantly fly to wherever the wind was present. Compared to the teleportation technique, it seemed quite similar, perhaps even covering a broader range. However, there's more to the two bloodlines. Supreme Saber Dao bloodline. The next moment, Lin Fei activated the Supreme Saber Dao bloodline again. Boon. Immediately, the fierce saber aura emanated from Lin Fei. The two martial kin bloodlines were simultaneously activated. At this moment, Lin Fei's true martial kin form rapidly underwent changes, with a sharp saber aura gradually radiating from him. Lin Fei himself started to resemble a saber. The void around him distorted, cut by the saber's edge, resulting in a warped void. The power of the two bloodlines fully merged, or rather, superimposed on each other. Under these circumstances, Lin Fei could exhibit the terrifying power of the Saber Dao while also moving with the wind, akin to teleportation speed. The advantages of both combined showcase the might of the martial kin bloodline. The more bloodlines, especially complementary ones, the stronger one becomes in totality. Furthermore, this is only the beginner stage of the Grandian Wind Dao bloodline. Once perfected, its power will be even more terrifying. Even with the beginner's Wind Dao bloodline, if Lin Fei encounters the Dao's Qinhe again, he's confident that Qinhe won't be able to escape. This is just with two bloodlines. If he acquires 3, 4, or even more in the future, his strength will undoubtedly increase exponentially. Next, I should integrate the Wind Dao divine ability to enhance the Grandian Wind Dao bloodline. In a flash, Lin Fei returned to the ancient origin sect. He headed to the 4th floor of the martial arts building, looking to select some Wind Dao divine abilities. However, while the ancient origin sect has numerous divine abilities, Wind Dao ones are somewhat scarce. All Wind Dao divine abilities integrate into my bloodline. My bloodline flows continuously, and you never cease. As Lin Fei's words faded, rays of divine abilities were instantly absorbed into his body. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He integrated only 11 Wind Dao divine abilities, and most of these were lesser divine abilities. Are there no more Wind Dao divine abilities? Lin Fei frowned, glancing at the system to check his progress with the Grandian Wind Dao bloodline. He had only achieved mastery, with just an 11% progress. Reaching transcendence seemed far off, not to mention perfection. To achieve perfection, he'd need to integrate numerous Wind Dao divine abilities, preferably those of the Grandian nature, for the best results. However, there were no more Wind Dao divine abilities left in the ancient origin sect. The territories currently controlled by the ancient origin sect, including those of the Tai Dao Palace, were primarily devoted to immortality cultivation, with few dedicated to martial cultivation. Thus, if Lin Fei wanted to find more Wind Dao divine abilities, he would need to seek alternatives. Lin Fei wasn't in a hurry. The threat from the Tai Dao Palace was now resolved, and he had achieved the status of martial king. With the odds at his disposal, he could afford to take a break. He didn't need to rush his cultivation. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, a month had passed. It was finally the day of the ancient origin sect's martial king celebration. Various factions from within the ancient origin sect and nearby powers had already arrived to pay their respects and present their gifts. Several prestigious martial king families were also invited. Being fellow martial artists, it was customary to extend invitations. Among the attendees was an acquaintance of Lin Fei, Xia Yuchen from the Xia family, a renowned martial kin lineage. But now, as an old friend of Lin Fei, she was invited into Lin Fei's residence. "I pay my respects to the martial king," Xiao Yuchen said, looking at Lin Fei with a complex expression. The Xiao family knew about her rapport with Lin Fei, so she was chosen to represent them. Xiao Yuchen looked at Lin Fei, her feelings a mix of awe and disbelief that he had genuinely become a martial king. "Aurora Sovereign, where are the formalities between us?" Lin Fei remarked upon seeing her. The two had met several times before, but the difference in their statuses was now starkly evident. Who could have imagined that after just a few months of our parting, Sovereign Lin would ascend to the rank of martial king, she mused. It's truly unbelievable. Even now, Xiao Yuchen found it hard to accept a reality before her. Yet, there was no denying it, Lin Fei had become a martial king. Lin Fei responded with a slight smile, "Rest assured, Aurora Sovereign. I remember the promise I made to you about helping you get through the Martial King Tower. Although I can't assist with that now, mentioning my name in connection with you and the Xiao family would allow you an exception to enter the blood pool should not be an issue. I won't go back on my word." He remembered his promise to Xiao Yuchen. Even though he couldn't assist with the Martial King Tower, he could still help her enter the blood pool. Lin Fei believed the Xiao family would honor his request, especially since it would also benefit them. Xiao Yuchen took a deep breath and, with determination, said, "Lin. Brother Lin. I don't need to enter the blood pool. I hope you can give me another opportunity and assist me once." "What do you need?" "If it doesn't go against my principles, I will gladly assist you," Lin Fei replied calmly. There were limits to the favors he would do, especially if they conflicted with his principles. Chapter 376. Xiao Yuchen's request. "I hope, Brother Lin, that you can help me capture a king-level exotic beast," Xiao Yuchen firmly expressed. "I need the bloodline of the king-level exotic beast." "Ah? You need the bloodline of a king-level exotic beast? Are you planning to fuse with its bloodline to achieve the title of martial king?" Lin Fei immediately guessed her intention. The goal of fusing with a king-level exotic beast bloodline could only be to become a martial king. After all, in the strictest sense, Lin Fei had also fused with the bloodline of a king-level exotic beast, and that's how he achieved his martial king status. But there's a significant risk involved. Just because Lin Fei succeeded doesn't mean everyone else will. The ability to suppress and control the potent bloodline of a king-level exotic beast is crucial. Lin Fei warned, "Aurora Sovereign, being from a martial king lineage, you should be more aware than I am. Once you attempt to merge with the bloodline of a king-level exotic beast, there's no turning back. Given your circumstances, it could be highly dangerous." Xiao Yuchen stared at Lin Fei, determination evident in her eyes. "Brother Lin, I'm well aware of the risks. Even with your influence, if I were to gain access to the family blood pool, there's no guarantee that I'll awaken the 9 divine abilities. The only way for me to become a martial king is to fuse with the king-level bloodline. If I take this chance, I might have an opportunity. If I don't, I'll have none." Lin Fei fell silent. It was clear that Xiao Yuchen was determined. In theory, descendants of the martial king lineage can follow a prescribed path, cultivate their inner bloodline step by step, awaken the divine abilities, and then become martial kings. However, few manage to ascend to that level. This systematic cultivation method lacks a certain grit and urgency. Few, like Xiao Yuchen, are willing to risk it all to fuse with the bloodline of a king-level exotic beast. After all, failure means death. Currently, as a martial sovereign, Xiao Yuchen already has a lifespan of 1,000 years, which is quite long. There's no apparent reason for her to take such a risk. Seeing Lin Fei's silence, Xiao Yuchen pleaded, "I've made up my mind. Please, Brother Lin, grant me this favor." She knew all too well that without Lin Fei's assistance, she would never acquire the king-level bloodline. After all, a king-level exotic beast is on par with great beings like the nascent soul or martial king. Although the Xiao family is a martial king lineage, they currently have no active martial kings. How could they possibly capture a king-level exotic beast or even obtain its bloodline? Only by seeking Lin Fei's help could she hope to acquire the bloodline of a king-level exotic beast. "Aurora Sovereign, I grant your request," Lin Fei replied. "However, given your current state, you must awaken at least 6 of the divine abilities to potentially suppress the bloodline of the king-level exotic beast and hold a glimmer of hope in becoming the martial king. To awaken 6 divine abilities. I'm grateful, Brother Lin. I will train hard to awaken these 6 divine abilities as soon as possible. Xiao Yuchen was elated. With Lin Fei's promise, she now held hope of becoming a martial king. This was her opportunity. Without Lin Fei, she might have gone her entire life without achieving the title of martial king. Knowing Lin Fei was her greatest fortune in life. By the way, I need divine abilities, a lot of them. Once the celebration is over, I might need to stay with the Xiao family for a while, Lin Fei mentioned to Xiao Yuchen. No problem. My family would be overjoyed to have someone of your stature visit, Xiao Yuchen immediately agreed. Now it was the Xiao family seeking Lin Fei's help. A martial king just in need of some divine abilities. Not just the Xiao family, but any martial king lineage would compete to oblige. The aim was to form a bond with Lin Fei. Look at the Tai Dao Palace, for instance. Although they have the majestic nascent soul lineage, the price they paid to have the Taoist Lord Shenhe intervene was monumental. In front of the Taoist Lord Shenhe, the Tai Dao Palace showed the utmost respect. Moreover, establishing a connection with him was no easy task. Families of the martial king lineage held the same reverence towards a true martial king. One never knows when he might need the favor of a martial king. Forming a relationship now meant having a reliable ally in times of need. Next was Lin Fei's martial king coronation ceremony. Many factions arrived at the ancient origin sect. There were no nascent soul cultivators or other martial kings present, given that Lin Fei was unfamiliar with any of them except the Taoist Lord Shenhe. As such, none attended the ceremony. However, families with martial king lineages like the Xiao family and institutions similar to the Tai Dao Palace sent representatives to witness the occasion. It was an opportunity to forge a bond with the ancient origin sect. After all, everyone knew that post the ceremony, the ancient origin sect would rise as a colossal force. A genuine martial king lineage and a powerful faction with an actual martial king at its helm. The ceremony went smoothly. Lin Fei even stimulated his martial king bloodline and demonstrated a hint of his martial king prowess. The attendees were astounded, realizing the rumors about Lin Fei were true. His defeat of the Taoist Lord Shenhe wasn't a mere coincidence. By the end, Lin Fei was bestowed with a martial king title, Ancient Origin Saber King. Being bestowed with the title of Saber King reflected the great admiration and respect people held for Lin Fei. More importantly, Lin Fei truly deserved the title Saber King. After all, he had evolved a saber world. Within the vast ancient continent, there were many martial kings who had been titled Saber King. Each one was outstandingly proficient in the Tao of the saber, reaching great heights. Each one of them had evolved their own saber world. Thus, Lin Fei's title of Saber King was truly fitting. Of course, the prefix Ancient Origin was added to distinguish him from other saber kings. The ceremony concluded swiftly. However, just because the ceremony ended didn't mean the news about Lin Fei had. On the contrary, during the ceremony, Lin Fei displayed his saber lineage bloodline and evolved the saber world, leaving many factions in awe. The title Ancient Origin Saber King is spread across the entire ancient continent, with countless factions recognizing his great name. Many were even sentimental, as the ancient continent had birthed another Saber King. However, the current Ancient Origin Saber King, Lin Fei, had already left the Ancient Origin sect. Together with Xiao Yuchen, he arrived at the Xiao family's residence. Naturally, the Xiao family, being well aware of the renowned Ancient Origin Saber King, welcomed him warmly. When Lin Fei expressed his desire to examine the divine abilities collected by the Xiao family, they immediately agreed. After all, these divine abilities were collected by the Xiao family. As long as they weren't specific to the Xiao family's bloodline, they were happy to let Lin Fei browse through them. Moreover, with the connection through Xiao Yuchen, the Xiao family felt secure, knowing that should any major trouble arise, the Ancient Origin Saber King, Lin Fei, would surely not stand by idly. Xiao family, Divine Ability Tower. This was Lin Fei's second visit to the Divine Ability Tower. This time, however, Lin Fei did not have any tokens. Yet, the elders guarding the Divine Ability Tower did not dare to slack off and welcomed him in. "Please, Saber King, feel free to explore," one of them said with the utmost respect. "Whatever you need, just let us know. We will be standing guard outside the Divine Ability Tower." With these words, the venerable elder of the Shao family guarding the Divine Ability Tower left discreetly. Lin Fei was now the sole individual inside the entire Divine Ability Tower. Chapter 377. Changes in the Shao family. I need Wind Attribute Divine Ability. Lin Fei declared, all the Wind Dao Divine Abilities shall merge with my Wind Dao bloodline. The bloodline is unending, and you will be eternal. Upon entering the Shao family's Divine Ability Tower, Lin Fei did not hesitate and immediately began integrating numerous divine abilities. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Beams of light entered Lin Fei's body. Each being represented a wind-attributed divine ability. The Shao family, being descendants of martial kings, had an enormous collection of divine abilities. Thus, Lin Fei could freely integrate a vast number of them. One by one, the divine abilities continuously merged with Lin Fei's Grandian Wind Dao bloodline. Simultaneously, Lin Fei's Grandian Wind Dao bloodline was rapidly advancing in its cultivation progress. 20%, 30%, 40%, 50%, 60%. It was visibly increasing at a rapid pace. Suddenly, Lin Fei trembled. His Grandian Wind Dao bloodline advanced from mastery to transcendence. But this wasn't enough for Lin Fei. He continued to integrate Wind Dao divine abilities, aiming to perfect his Grandian Wind Dao bloodline. Inside the city of the Shao family, a man in black robes leisurely strolled the streets. He gazed at the distant Shao residence and then looked around, shaking his head slightly. The Shao family, still the same, stagnant like a pool of still water. At the rate they are awakening their bloodline's divine abilities, they'll never birth another martial king in their lifetime. It's such a pity. I once shone brilliantly and was immensely talented, initially seen as a martial king seed. However, due to a minor mistake, I was expelled from the Shao family. Such foolishness. Now, I've returned to claim what's rightfully mine. The man in the grey robe showed a faint smile. With one step, he arrived directly at the Shao residence. Halt, unauthorized personnel cannot enter the Shao family grounds. A guard from the Shao family stepped up to stop him. Bang! With a casual wave of his hand and a faint smile on his face, the Shao family guard instantly exploded into a mist of blood. The man reached out, drawing the guard's bloodline essence into his body. He closed his eyes, savoring the feeling. Such a familiar sensation, the bloodline of the Shao family. Since the Shao family once stopped me, I'll start with them now to reclaim everything. Continuing forward, he was challenged, who are you? Bang! Any Shao family members he encountered, whether ordinary family members or martial saints and martial sovereigns, instantly exploded, turning into mists of blood. In a short time, the entire Shao family area was filled with the scent of blood. Such a commotion couldn't possibly go unnoticed by the Shao family. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. One by one, martial sovereigns flew out, positioning themselves in front of the man in the black robe. The man in the black robe had ceased his advance. He observed the figures before him with great interest. Most of the silhouettes were unfamiliar to him, with only one or two resonating with recognition. Who are you? Why have you trespassed upon the Shao household, committing such a grave act of slaughter? The martial sovereign of the Shao clan posed the question with a tone of grave authority. The Shao clan was known for their amiability. But this robed man, his presence was both regal and eerily enigmatic. His methods of execution were beyond comprehension. With a mere flick of his finger, whether it be a martial saint or a martial sovereign, they would combust instantly. Such power made even the Shao clan's martial sovereign tread with utmost caution. Has it been over 800 years and none recognize me? The cloaked figure mused coldly. It's disappointing that in all these centuries, only a handful of martial sovereigns have emerged from the Shao clan. The man in the black robe shook his head, his gaze growing colder. Wait! 800 years ago. You Shao Qianling, exclaimed an ancient martial sovereign, eyes widened in disbelief, his gaze fixated intently on the robed figure. At last, someone remembers. The figure, identified as Shao Qianling, said indifferently. But I do not recognize you. The elderly sovereign trembled. 8 centuries ago, I was merely a martial saint. Shao Qianling, you've returned and you're alive. You should have passed the millennium limit. The martial sovereign was visibly shaken. He knew of a secretive tale from the Shao family's past. Shao Qianling, the clan's martial sovereign from 8 centuries ago, was heralded as a prodigious talent. He was even regarded as the prime candidate to achieve the title of martial king. However, it was a tragic tale, as Xiao Qianling had delved into forbidden arts. He covertly captured martial sovereigns from other martial king families, aiming to extract and integrate their bloodlines to elevate himself. Such actions epitomized the dark arts. If he had succeeded, it wouldn't have mattered. Once he achieved the title of martial king, none could challenge him, and he could have easily left the Xiao clan. But before Xiao Qianling's plan came to fruition, he was discovered by other martial king families. The Xiao clan prepared to execute him in light of his egregious actions. The act of capturing as from other martial king families and extracting their bloodlines was an unforgivable transgression. When the Xiao clan prepared to execute Xiao Qianling, they did not expect that he had already prepared a nascent soul magic treasure. Its origins were unknown. This magic treasure was single-use, and any martial artist could wield its power. In a brief moment, the heavens shattered and the earth split. Xiao Qianling was gravely injured, yet he managed to escape. In the subsequent years, other martial king families dispatched assassins, but to no avail. As centuries passed, no trace of Xiao Qianling was found. And given that he had exceeded the millennial age limit, his death seemed inevitable. Over time, his name faded from memory. Yet Xiao Qianling had now returned, very much alive. The millennium limit was a boundary none could elude. It signaled certain death unless one achieved the title of martial king. The martial sovereign of the Xiao clan swiftly conveyed all the known information about Xiao Qianling into the ears of the other martial sovereigns, explaining the entire situation. For a moment, all the martial sovereigns of the Xiao clan were visibly alarmed. Xiao Yuchen felt a tumultuous storm raging within her heart. A certain possibility surfaced in her mind, one that was shared by the other martial sovereigns as well. Xiao Qianling, have you become a martial king? Xiao Yuchen hesitantly asked. Even though the idea seemed inconceivable, it was seemingly the only plausible explanation. With a swift motion, Xiao Qianling shifted his gaze to Xiao Yuchen, giving a slight nod. Indeed, are you envious? He remarked. Back then, I was like a hunted dog, constantly on the run and in hiding, thinking my end was near. But as they say, every cloud has a silver lining. Fate allowed me to survive and stumble upon the bloodline of a king-level exotic beast. He laughed heartily. It was a desperate situation, filled with danger. By integrating the bloodline of this king-level exotic beast, I miraculously managed to become a martial king. It was as everyone had feared, Xiao Qianling had truly become a martial king. The revelation weighed heavily on everyone's hearts. Under normal circumstances, the emergence of a martial king within the Xiao clan would have been a cause for celebration. But with Xiao Qianling, this might be more of a curse than a blessing. Xiao Qianling, began the martial sovereign of the Xiao clan, having become a martial king is your own fortune. But why have you returned to the Xiao clan, causing so much devastation? Regardless of your path, the blood of the Xiao clan still runs through your veins. Xiao Qianling laughed again. Indeed, I will always remember the Xiao clan bloodline that flows within me. That's why I have returned. I have perfected one bloodline, and for my second bloodline, I've chosen the one from the Xiao clan that exists within me. I've come back to harness the Xiao bloodline from all of you to achieve my second martial king bloodline. This should be an honor for all of you. His words sent a wave of shock and horror across the faces of the Xiao clan members. They realized the sinister truth. Xiao Qianling was here to extract the martial king bloodline from the Xiao descendants, aiming to complete his second bloodline. Chapter 378. The demonic Tao must be exterminated. Come on, shouldn't you all be proud of me? After all, I am a descendant of the Xiao clan. Ha ha ha. Xiao Qianling seemed utterly mad. Boom. Behind Xiao Qianling, a colossal phantom emerged, the phantom of a martial king. Instantly, an overpowering aura of life suppression shrouded all the Xiao clan descendants. He truly is a martial king. He wants to extract our bloodlines. He's gone mad. He wants to annihilate the Xiao clan. No, this is his revenge. Not just against the Xiao clan but also against the martial king families. What can we do? How can our Xiao clan confront him? He's a supreme martial king. But doesn't our Xiao clan have a martial king too? This realization struck many. Indeed, the Xiao clan also had a martial king. And that very martial king was currently within the Xiao clan. Everyone's eyes turned to Xiao Yuchen. Everyone knew she had a deep connection with that particular martial king. Without hesitation, Xiao Yuchen turned to leave. However, just as she took a step, a resonating hum came from her, and she felt her bloodline violently convulse within her, as if it was about to separate from her body. Not only Xiao Yuchen, but every other Xiao clan martial sovereign felt the same. It's over. Despair filled Xiao Yuchen's heart. In front of Xiao Qianling, even the thought of escaping seemed like a luxury. They were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered, utterly powerless. Meanwhile, within the Xiao clan's divine ability tower, Lin Fei had successfully merged all the wind-type divine abilities. System, Lin Fei muttered, accessing the system panel. Host, Lin Fei. Martial Realm, Early Martial King. Supreme Saber Dao Bloodline, Perfection. Grandian Wind Dao Bloodline, Transcendence, Progress 75%. Saber World, Perfection. Lin Fei's Grandian Wind Dao Bloodline was still slightly lacking, not yet perfected. It seems I need to find more Wind Dao divine abilities to perfect my Grandian Wind Dao Bloodline, Lin Fei contemplated without much disappointment. Though the Xiao clan was a family of martial kings, their divine abilities went endless. To have his Grandian Wind Dao Bloodline reach Transcendence was already commendable. As for the divine abilities Lin Fei still needed, other martial king families might be eager to provide them, seeking to form an alliance with Lin Fei. This was the advantage of his newfound status. If Lin Fei were a mere martial sovereign, he would have to employ various strategies and schemes, and even then, success was not guaranteed. But as a martial king, acquiring divine abilities was just a matter of a simple request. With a soft wish, Lin Fei suddenly became aware of a commotion outside. HM. In a mere heartbeat, Lin Fei was outside the divine ability tower. There, two martial sovereigns of the Xiao family stood, their faces pale with terror. It looked as though their very lifeblood was about to be drawn from their bodies, as if they were on the verge of being ripped apart from the inside out. In a flash, Lin Fei was before the two martial sovereigns, placing a gentle hand on each. The quiet sigh of relief from them was palpable as they regained their composure and their tumultuous inner energies settled. Saber King. We pay our respects, Saber King. What has transpired? Lin Fei inquired. A great enemy, a martial king, has descended upon the Xiao family. Our family is now teetering on the brink of destruction. We beseech you, ancient origin Saber King, to save the Xiao family. Where is Xiao Yuchen? Aurora's sovereign is in the front hall, that martial king is with him. Lin Fei's expression shifted subtly. While he was largely indifferent to the Xiao family's plight, he couldn't stand idly by if Xiao Yuchen was in danger. In the very next moment, Lin Fei's silhouette blurred, vanishing without a trace. Meanwhile, in the Xiao family's front hall, every member of the Xiao family remained still, as if time had frozen. Xiao Qianling sauntered past them, shaking his head in evident disappointment. Centuries have passed, yet the Xiao family hasn't produced a single martial king. You shouldn't have betrayed me back then. If I had achieved martial king status, those martial king families would have groveled before me. Who would have dared to criticize? It's the Xiao family's weakness in handing me over that brought about today's calamity. Such a feeble lineage hardly deserves to exist. Xiao Qianling's aura was murderous. His heart was filled with vengeance, not only for the Xiao family but also for the martial king families that had pursued him. Now, he had achieved the status of martial king, placing him above all. Even those storied martial king families, in his eyes, were but worms to be crushed underfoot. He had longed for this day for ages, and seeing the Xiao family members look at him with fear, anger, and hatred brought immense satisfaction to his heart. He too had once felt those emotions, but what use were they against absolute power? I know you feel fear, anger, and hatred. But there's nothing you can do. You've become complacent, resting on the laurels of being a martial king family lineage. You've lost your sense of reverence and ambition. He continued, a hint of malevolence creeping into his tone. Today, I'll show you how easily the martial king lineage can be shattered. With a mere flick of his finger, explosions resonated throughout the hall. The martial saints of the Xiao family were blown apart, followed swiftly by the martial sovereigns. As one martial sovereign's form shattered, a strand of lifeblood essence flowed into Xiao Qianling. He could feel the Xiao family's lineage strengthening within him. Once, Xiao Qianling had been forced to merge with the bloodline of a king-level exotic beast. He wasn't cultivating the Xiao family's lineage. In fact, he had already perfected another lineage. Now, he was cultivating the Xiao family's lineage, his birth bloodline, which naturally would amplify his abilities. By merging with the lifeblood of the Xiao family members, the second lineage perfection seemed imminent. You've fallen into the demonic tower. Xiao Qianling, halt at once. If you continue down this path of wickedness, the other martial kings and nascent soul cultivators won't tolerate your existence. Stop now, and we could even welcome you back and allow you to become the master of the Xiao family. As the Xiao family's martial king, wouldn't that be infinitely better than your current descent into darkness? These martial sovereigns, fearing death, desperately tried to persuade Xiao Qianling. But why would Xiao Qianling care about the mere position of the head of the Xiao family? His primary intent was revenge and, incidentally, to cultivate the second bloodline. As for the tolerance of other martial kings and nascent souls, Xiao Qianling couldn't care less. I am a martial king. Who dares not to tolerate my existence? If there truly are other nascent souls or martial kings who cannot stomach my rise, then they are simply waiting to be slaughtered. I am no longer the person I was before. Now, anyone who stands in my way will be slain. The air around Xiao Qianling grew cold with murderous intent. Clearly, his many years outside had been filled with countless battles and killings. The mere words of a few from the Xiao family wouldn't sway him. Is that so? Demonic Tao. Everyone should strike you down. Suddenly, a chilling voice pierced Xiao Qianling's ears. Whoosh! Whipping his head around, Xiao Qianling and the rest beheld a figure advancing. Each step seemed leisurely but covered dozens of meters. In the blink of an eye, this figure had reached the front hall. Lin Fei. The ancient origin saber king, Lin Fei, had arrived. Chapter 379. The Clash of Two Bloodlines. You're not from the Xiao family. Xiao Qianling stared intently at Lin Fei. Danger. He sensed a dangerous aura emanating from Lin Fei. There could only be one explanation. The man before him was a martial king. And the Xiao family certainly didn't have a martial king. The ancient origin saber king is from the ancient origin sect. We are saved. We are finally saved. Xiao Qianling has descended into the demonic Tao. Only a martial king can counter him. Thankfully, the ancient origin saber king is here with us. For a moment, many members of the Xiao family felt relieved. They were desperate before, but now, with Lin Fei's appearance, their spirits lifted. Ancient origin saber king. Xiao Qianling naturally heard the murmurs of the Xiao family members below. But he had come from a distant land and hadn't heard of the ancient origin saber king before. However, being referred to as the saber king confirmed the opponent's status as a martial king. If you're not from the Xiao family, then this matter has nothing to do with you. Are you trying to intervene? The giant shadow behind Xiao Qianling solidified further and exuded an even more terrifying aura enveloping Lin Fei. I've slain a nascent soul magic avatar before. I wonder if a martial king's true form is as fragile as a nascent soul magic avatar. Lin Fei didn't care for idle chat. Supreme Saber Dao Bloodline. Boon. In an instant, Lin Fei activated his Supreme Saber Dao Bloodline, causing his figure to expand immensely, resembling a divine saber, emanating a sharp saber aura. A saber started to form in his hands. Seeing Lin Fei's martial king's true body, Xiao Qianling's expression slightly changed. The terrifying sharpness of the saber made alarm bells ring in his mind. Frost Bloodline. Xiao Qianling similarly activated his internal bloodline. Immediately, a cold aura emanated from his true martial king form, resembling ancient ice. Anything that came near Xiao Qianling's true form would be instantly frozen into ice crystals. The two towering true martial king forms faced off in midair. Their enormous figures exerted a tremendous pressure that seemed to warp the very fabric of space. The oppressive aura alone caused all the warriors of the Xiao family, including the martial sovereigns, to tremble in fear. In the face of a martial king, even making a move required courage. Merely their aura was too overwhelming for them. It was a stark difference in their essence of life. This is the martial king. Everyone gazed into the void. Although they hailed from a family with a martial king lineage, their own martial king had passed away long ago. It had been ages since they'd seen a martial king, let alone witnessed one in action. Crack! Crack! As Xiao Qianling activated his frost bloodline, the surrounding space began to freeze, spreading in all directions. Fall back! The Xiao family's martial sovereigns, their expressions changing slightly, immediately began to retreat. Even though the aura emitted by Xiao Qianling was not intentionally aimed at them, they knew that if they were to be frozen, even a martial sovereign would certainly meet their demise. Heavenly Saber, strike! Lin Fei also felt the cold aura. This was his first time engaging with a martial king in battle. When he had previously fought against the nascent soul magic avatar of the Taoist Lord Shenhe, it felt a bit awkward for Lin Fei, as if something was lacking. This was to be expected. After all, the Taoist Lord Shenhe was a nascent soul cultivator. No matter how formidable the magic avatar of a nascent soul was, it still paled in comparison to the true form of a martial king. Hence, Lin Fei couldn't fully enjoy the fight. But now, it was different. His opponent this time was a genuine martial king. With a single swing, Lin Fei unleashed a saber light thousands of meters long that pierced through the void like a ribbon, heading straight for Xiao Qianling. This saber strike radiated a piercing edge. Xiao Qianling shouted, "Free space!" Crack! Crack! In an instant, he threw a punch. An intense cold erupted from his fist, freezing the surrounding space. Not only that, the cold aura collided with Lin Fei's saber light. Astonishingly, Lin Fei's saber light was frozen in place. However, the cold aura was also split open by the saber. Boom! The void seemed to tremble, the frozen space around shattered, and countless shards of ice rained down. Swoosh! Xiao Qianling's palm was cleanly severed by Lin Fei's saber. In terms of offensive power, Lin Fei's supreme saber Dao bloodline was indeed superior. After all, the saber's bloodline is inherently powerful in its offense. Furthermore, Lin Fei possessed the supreme saber Dao bloodline, an extremely potent bloodline specifically tailored for offensive prowess. Hence, when Lin Fei's saber collided with Xiao Qianling's frost bloodline, Lin Fei had the upper hand, cutting off Xiao Qianling's palm in the process. However, no blood oozed from Xiao Qianling's severed palm. And even though the palm was cut off, it still managed to block Lin Fei's saber strike, preventing it from landing on Xiao Qianling's body. Xiao Qianling's heart sank. In a swift move, he grabbed the severed palm, clutching it firmly in his hand. Crack! Crack! The hand, covered with ice crystals by Xiao Qianling, quickly expelled the residual power of Lin Fei within. Xiao Qianling then attached the severed hand back to his arm. The flesh on the arm rapidly grew back, effectively reattaching the severed hand. In reality, when one reaches the level of a martial king, it's not just about reattaching a severed hand. They possess the terrifying ability of regeneration from just a drop of blood. As long as they aren't destroyed on a particle level, a martial king can never truly die. Of course, a martial king's attack can reach the particle level, but Lin Fei's saber strike, blocked by Xiao Qianling's frost bloodline, couldn't reach that extent. Moreover, this frost bloodline seemed to somewhat counter Lin Fei's saber Dao bloodline. What a saber Dao bloodline, Xiao Qianling commented. Even under the freeze of my frost bloodline, you managed to sever my hand. Such power is indeed formidable. But I possess more than just the frost bloodline. His eyes turned icy cold. Boom! From Xiao Qianling's body erupted a second bloodline, the bloodline of the Xiao family. This lineage, inherently a martial king bloodline, naturally existed within him as a descendant of the Xiao family. It was only natural for him to cultivate it. However, since he hadn't consumed the bloodlines of many members of the Xiao family, this second bloodline wasn't yet perfected. You have a second bloodline, do you think I don't? Lin Fei retorted. The Grandian Wen Dao bloodline within him surged forth. Boom! The Grandian Wen Dao bloodline erupted instantly. Patterns began to form on Lin Fei's massive true martial king form as if he was covered in a layer of grey wind, emanating a chilling sensation. Moreover, Lin Fei's Grandian Wen Dao bloodline was nearing perfection, transcendent in nature, and was evidently stronger than Xiao Qianling's second bloodline. Heavenly Saber, strike. Grandian Wind, rise. Lin Fei slashed out with his saber once more, this time with the momentum as if the heavens themselves were tilting. But this strike was not just a simple saber light, it was accompanied by the wind, the Grandian wind. For a moment, the entire void was filled with sharp saber lights and an omnipresent wind.